3 stories beneath a dying lake, engineers are executing an audacious gamble. They are drilling straight through the bottom of an active reservoir to suck out the very last drops of water. Look at the canyon walls above Lake Mead. That 150-foot white scar is a calcium carbonate deposit. It functions as a geological gravestone, recording millions of gallons of water already lost to the desert air. When Hoover Dam was completed in 1935, it took 7 years of massive river flows to fill this basin. Today, Lake Mead sits at approximately 31% of its total capacity. 2/3 of the largest reservoir in the United States is simply gone. That massive gap of exposed rock is a permanent physical record of a civilization built on a water budget that no longer exists. The consequences radiate far beyond the lake. 40 million people across 7 states and 2 countries depend entirely on the Colorado River for their survival, agriculture, and electricity. This chart tracks the historical flow of the Colorado River over centuries. The 1922 compact that divided the river's water was signed during a statistically rare, anomalous peak in rainfall. Trace it forward through the 20th century, and the river's actual flow plummets far below those legal promises. Looking at this cross-section of Lake Mead, you can see how this mathematical flaw threatened Las Vegas. The city draws 90% of its water from the lake through 2 submerged intake pipes. As the river delivered less water, the lake's surface level kept dropping dangerously close to that lower pipe. If the water level dropped below that second intake, Las Vegas would face an imminent mechanical failure. The city's primary supply lines would immediately suck dry air. Facing the prospect of dry pipes, Las Vegas spent $817 million to drill a new 3rd intake tunnel, placing it significantly deeper than the original 2. To build it, a 450-ton machine named Lady Eleanor spent 4 brutal years grinding through solid volcanic rock in complete darkness, operating under millions of tons of water. It created an incredible paradox. Las Vegas, an air-conditioned desert oasis famous for infinite excess, became the most water-efficient metropolis in the American West. The city implemented highly aggressive behavioral policies, literally paying residents to rip out their lawns. They successfully removed the equivalent of 7,000 football fields of ornamental grass and replaced it with dry desert landscaping. They also built a world-leading indoor recycling program. Every drop of water from showers, sinks, and toilets is captured, treated, and returned directly to Lake Mead. Las Vegas can effectively use the exact same water twice. Through intense engineering and strict conservation, the city survived on a fraction of its historical footprint, buying itself crucial time against a collapsing river. But despite every drop saved and recycled, the lake continued to fall. Heavy infrastructure like boat ramps and marinas were left stranded in the mud miles from the retreating shoreline. This diagram illustrates a geological phenomenon called isostatic rebound. Trillions of gallons of water used to press heavily down on the lakebed. As the reservoir empties, that immense weight is removed, and the compressed earth literally bounces back upward. Look at what happens to the infrastructure sitting on top of that rebounding ground. The upward warp causes severe stress fractures in rigid pipelines. The drying sediment settles unevenly, cracking the surface, and seismologists are now tracking increasing clusters of micro-earthquakes along fault lines directly beneath the reservoir. The crisis is no longer contained to water scarcity. The underlying geology of the region is physically rejecting the changing landscape. The falling water threatens to expose 2 catastrophic numerical thresholds hiding inside the Hoover Dam. The first threshold sits at 950 feet, minimum power pool. If the lake level falls below that line, the dam loses the water pressure required to spin its turbines. That event would strip the grid of a vital power source, threatening the electricity supply for 1.3 million people across 3 states. This cutaway reveals the ultimate threshold, a precise mathematical point at 895 feet, known as dead pool. Drop below this pipe and gravity stops. Millions of gallons remain trapped uselessly behind the wall, while downstream pipes run dry. Reaching dead pool terminates the river's function as a delivery system. Downstream users face a total mechanical failure of their water supply. To understand the root of the crisis, look at the river's source in the Rocky Mountains. The snowpack is declining. Hotter springs melt the snow faster, and rising temperatures evaporate the runoff before it can ever reach the reservoirs downstream. The Colorado River Basin is experiencing a permanent structural reduction in its water supply. Climate models predicted this drying trend, but the reality arrived decades faster than the math anticipated. The human consequences are accumulating quickly. Farmers in Arizona are receiving zero water allocations, leaving generations of fields entirely unirrigated. Meanwhile, the retreating shoreline continues to expose sunken boats and submerged history that were supposed to stay buried forever. Las Vegas's third intake tunnel is a brilliant feat of engineering, but it only delays the inevitable. It is ultimately just a deeper straw placed into a glass that continues to shrink. We cannot engineer, drill, or recycle our way out of a river that is mathematically vanishing. The century of borrowed water has ended. The Southwest must adapt to the physical limits of its landscape. Maybe skip the lawn.